What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones video. As you can see by the title, I want to talk about some things Dan and Dave kinda forgot to answer before Game of Thrones ended. About a year ago, right before the final season aired, I made a few videos where I listed some of the things I hoped they would answer before it was all said and done. Now, I will admit they did give us some answers, even if we did not like them, but we were not given any closure for most of the things I listed in those videos. If you have been a subscriber of mine for over a year, you might actually remember those videos I made. In one video, I talked about a handful of the different unsolved mysteries in Game of Thrones that still needed answered. In another video, I listed a handful of the characters that vanished from the story who still needed some form of closure. I want to go back and look at those videos, then, like I said at the beginning, I want to talk about some things Dan and Dave forgot to answer before Game of Thrones ended. What did they actually leave out that could have made this a better story if included? Let's talk about it. Number 1. Where was Howland Reed? As you all know, Howland Reed is the father of Jojen and Meera Reed, but he was also one of Ned Stark's most loyal friends.
That's my father.
The man beside him is Howland Reed, Meera's father.
This is one of many very important characters that we never actually saw in the current story. The only time we saw Howland Reed was during one of Bran Stark's flashback scenes at the Tower of Joy. That scene provided an answer that millions of fans were wanting to know for decades, and that, of course, was the identity of Jon Snow's mother. Since Ned Stark died before he could ever reveal the truth about Jon's parents, Howland Reed was one of the characters fans were hoping would show up to reveal that information. Now, although Bran Stark was able to do this on his own, it would have made for a really great scene if Howland Reed would have shown up to confirm the truth to Jon, and everyone else for that matter. Some of you might not know this, but the author, George R. R. Martin, has went on record saying Howland Reed will absolutely show up in the current story in the books, most likely to reveal some very important information. Not only does Howland Reed know the truth about Jon Snow, but he may also know some things about the White Walkers. You see, when Howland Reed was much younger, he wanted to seek out some additional knowledge, so he went to the God's Eye in search of the Green Men. He ended up spending an entire winter there. The Isle of Faces is famously known for being the location where the First Men and the Children of the Forest met to agree to end their years of fighting with each other. This is also one of the only places in the South that still have weirwood trees and Children of the Forest, so there's no telling how much information Howland Reed learned while he was there. Doesn't this sound like a fascinating character that should be included at the end of the story? He could have made the final season so much more interesting, but Dan and Dave must have forgot.
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her, and they're just waiting for her to come back.
Number 2. What information was inside Sam's books? When Sam and Gilly were traveling to Old Town for Sam to become a maester, Sam said the main reason for him going there was so he could learn as much information as possible to help Jon for when the time came to defeat the White Walkers.
I said that because I want you and little Sam to be safe. That's all I want. To become a maester so I can help Jon when the time comes, so we'll be safe.
Well, as soon as Sam gets there, we see him looking at the books in the restricted area, hoping to find some much needed information that could help them. We even saw Gilly reading a book about the Long Night.
Legends of the Long Night.
Now, unfortunately, no one at the Citadel wanted to believe Sam about the threat beyond the wall. This is what led Sam to leaving before he could even become a maester. Since he could not get the help that he needed, he decided to take things into his own hands. Sam and Gilly left Old Town in the middle of the night, but not before Sam took a bunch of old books and documents with him. Most of us did assume those books had to contain some crucial information about how to defeat the White Walkers, but we never got to see what was inside them. In fact, Sam did not tell Jon any helpful information about the White Walkers when he returned to Winterfell. So you have to wonder, why did they show Sam taking all these things if they weren't going to come into play later? These old books could have been the key to Dan and Dave giving us some answers to Game of Thrones' greatest mysteries, but once again, they must have forgot.
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her, and they're just waiting for her to come back.
Number 3. Whatever happened to Quaithe? This is another one of the most interesting and mysterious characters from Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. For those of you that don't know, Quaithe is from the Shadowlands beyond the Shy, which just so happens to be the same location Illyrio said Daenerys' dragon eggs were from, as well as Melisandre. Now, although this character wasn't in very many scenes, I know it was someone I was dying to see again, but she just vanished from the story. Based on her few scenes, she did seem to support Daenerys, but we really did not know her true intentions.
Will you betray her again, Jorah the Undel? Will you betray her again?
Never.
In the A Song of Ice and Fire books, she talks to Dany about some of the prophecies that have yet to be revealed. This has always made me wonder what her endgame is. What else does she have in store for Daenerys Targaryen? Does she really want to see Dany succeed, or are her intentions more sinister than we thought? The only way this will be answered now is if it happens in the books, because Dan and Dave kinda forgot to bring this character back into the story.
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her, and they're just waiting for her to come back.
Number 4. What was Jack Agar really up to? This is something fans have wanted answered ever since the character was introduced. Again, this is another one of those fascinating and mysterious characters from Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. We meet Jack Agar all the way back in the second season when Arya Stark and Gendry are traveling to the Wall with the other recruits for the Night's Watch. He was brought with them from King's Landing. Somehow, this ninja assassin wound up in the Black Cells right under the Red Keep at the same exact time as Ned Stark. I find this very interesting because Jack Agar does not seem like the type of character that would allow themselves to get captured unless they wanted it to happen. Why was he down there anyway? And why did he immediately take interest in Arya Stark?
You're called Ari. This man has the honor to be Jack Agar.
This does not seem like a coincidence to me. It's almost as if all of this was set in motion before Ned Stark was eventually killed. Now, some fans say he might have even traded faces with Ned Stark, Syrio Forel, and even Rhaegar Targaryen, but Game of Thrones never revealed any of this. You have to wonder, what were his true intentions for Arya Stark, because the Faceless Men have a very different agenda in the books. You see, Jack Agar is not the character that is training Arya at the House of Black and White. In the books, Jaqen actually goes to the Citadel undercover as someone else. While there, he does come into contact with Samwell Tarly and Marwyn the Mage, an Archmaester of the Citadel. Now, since he's at the Citadel, we have to assume he's there to kill someone in particular, or to find out some information that is yet to be revealed. One of the most interesting things is that Jaqen steals a key that opens every door at the Citadel. This will give him access to those same books in the restricted area that we saw Samwell Tarly take with him. But again, you have to wonder, why wasn't any of this explored in Game of Thrones? Dan and Dave could have taken a character like Jack Agar in so many different fascinating directions, but I guess they kind of forgot to give this character's own storyline an interesting ending.
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her, and they're just waiting for her to come back.
Number 5. Who is the Night King? Now, this is the one I was wanting answers to the most. The Night King is another character shrouded in mystery. He is the supreme leader and creator of the White Walkers, a force that was introduced in the opening scene of the very first episode. Not only was he the greatest threat Westeros has ever known, but his magical abilities seem to be growing with each passing season. Although the White Walkers were introduced in the beginning, we did not meet their leader until the 4th season, when we saw him create a White Walker out of one of Craster's sons. Ever since then, we saw him continue to grow his army by the thousands, and we knew there would come a day when Westeros would have to face this threat head-on. Based on the little information given from the books, we knew the White Walkers had some very close ties to House Stark. According to Old Nan, the original Night's King was a member of House Stark, who would eventually be slain by his own brother, the Stark of Winterfell. But none of this was ever explored in Game of Thrones either. Thanks to the Three-Eyed Raven and Bran Stark, we finally saw how the Night King was created during a flashback, but we never did find out who the man was. I've always wondered, where did he come from, and why was he chosen to lead an army of ice demons set out to destroy all of humanity?
It was you. You made the White Walkers.
We were at war. We were being slaughtered. Our sacred trees cut down. We needed to defend ourselves.
Did he already have some magical abilities before he became the Night King? Did he happen to come from a very special bloodline? The Night King and the White Walkers were built up as the most dangerous threat since the opening episode, but they were completely wiped out by the poke of a dagger before any of these questions were answered. Why, Dan and Dave? Why? The Night King's character and backstory could have went in so many interesting directions, but once again, Dan and Dave kind of forgot how to write one.
While Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her, and they're just waiting for her to come back.
Now, these are only a handful of things that were never answered before Game of Thrones ended, but we all know there were so many more things left out of the show. They could have easily made more episodes, and even seasons for that matter, if only they would have included some of these things. But I look forward to the topics getting explored at great lengths in the books. Anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. What storylines do you wish Dan and Dave would have included before the end? What did they leave out that you really wanted answers to? I'm interested in reading what you have to say. I want to thank all of you for watching the video. As always, I really appreciate that. I hope to see everyone come back for the next video. Have a great day. Bye.